Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. Oh my gosh, my guest today. Oh, the beautiful, the talented, the wonderful, the all giving Amy Jordan. This woman is an award winning author, inspirational speaker, and choreographer. She truly embodies her mantra of dance because you can. Amy's professional and personal experience has given her the insight needed to help others. Her life has been full of unexpected challenges, sending her on a journey that transformed tragedy into triumph. Amy has type 1 juvenile diabetes, and she fought most of her life to hide it. And as a professional dancer, she experienced complications from the diabetes that caused her to lose sight in one eye, becoming legally blind. Life challenged Amy yet again when she was hit and run over. Yes, you heard me. Hit and run over by a bus while living in New York City. The accident nearly ended her life, and her leg came very close to being amputated. She used her dance training and discipline to survive dozens of surgeries and, against all odds, regained use of her leg. Amy is truly the epitome of where medicine meets ministry. Amy, welcome to the show, my love.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, that's you. Isn't it something when you hear your intro, you realize, wait, who are we talking about?
I heard the cat. Maybe it's Sadie.
You truly wonder, wow, that's me when you hear somebody else talk about what you have been through. You too, when I heard your story and we were connected by a mutual friend, I knew that I had to have you on the show because you are an individual who truly fought against odds. I mean, the whole premise of this show is talking about how individuals can transform tragedy into triumph, how they can take their misery and turn it into their mission. And so you are truly that individual. And I got tons of questions. I'm sure my audience wants me to make sure that I get through all of them. So let's just jump right in. How old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1 juvenile diabetes?
I was 4 years old, and this was 1973 because hair color, does us all wonders.
Looking good, girl.
And at that time, no social media, no internet, no human insulin, no blood sugar testing, no pump, no carb counting. You peed in a cup and didn't really get a read. I mean, you're a doctor.
Exactly.
And the imaging around diabetes was very not extremely positive and not extremely hopeful. So when you're 4 years old and you're growing up and you're inundated with this messaging, it creates a bit of a, paradox in your life. Like, I'm supposed to go live and be happy, but they're telling me I'm not going to make it. So which one is it?
Right. That's a lot to handle. That's a lot to handle. So you were doing things where you're hiding insulin injections or hiding what you were eating from your friends, and somebody will offer you something and you'll have to probably say, no, I'm not hungry. No, thank you.
My parents chose denial, which is often a means of coping with trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was a sneaker. I was trying to pretend like I was a normal kid. I didn't like the sick label. I didn't like them having to come with me everywhere. So I was like, well, I'm just going to show you, and eat whatever I want and hide the candy wrappers in my closet till I get caught. And.
Wow. Oh my goodness. And see, as a physician, I know that what you were doing could have caused you
My
not
life.
to be here talking to me today.
Oh, yeah.
So clearly, you are an example that there is purpose for your life. And sometimes you can do some of the dumbest things, and forces will cause those dumbest things not to have the impact that would usually be intended, because that purpose has to be lived out. All of the people that you have connected with and impacted they would have lost out on that message. And I'm just thinking about the lives that you saved, because I, as a professional speaker as well, have had people in the audience when I have spoken come up to me and say that there was just one or two sentences that grabbed their attention, and they had planned, they had written their suicide letter, they were done. The diagnosis was too much for them to handle. They, settled everything with their families, they got their house in order, and their plan was to just leave the letter and just be done.
Out with
But
it.
it was something that I said that caused them to decide to live. And so I know that you have had a similar impact on many individuals. So thank God that Hershey's Kiss, that almond joy, whatever it
Way
was.
more than Hershey's Kisses. It was, I joke that I had this wonderful nurse when I was in inpatient rehab after my accident, which we'll get to later. Mr. Osu, wonderful man, so sweet. He says, "Amy, you are like a cat. You are on your 12th life." The bus wasn't my first altercation with death. So it is, looking back, knowing what I know now about the complexity of managing my diabetes and keeping an A1C at 5.8. And I fortunately encountered some people in my young adulthood that were like, "You're gonna die. You better get your act together."
Wow. Now, how has life with a chronic condition shaped who you are and how you respond to the world?
That's a really great question. And I talk about it in my book. And, November is National Diabetes Month. So we're setting up a big campaign. I was just writing about that because it's not always all negative. It's taught me discipline. It's taught me self-care. It's, the denial that I have and the shame that I had as a young person and a teenager and a young adult, and not feeling like anyone would want to be with me or that I could hold down a job. Like, the messaging I got was very much, I can't take care of myself. My life won't be complete. Uh, I'm not lovable. I can't get pregnant, which I personally wouldn't do as a person with diabetes. I know people do it. I have my own opinions about that, even with the technology, but it would be my choice to not have done that, do that. I don't have children, but so I got to really flip that switch as I began to come out of the closet with my diabetes, as I talk about. And, this is what I have. It really taught me the people who care about me will want to learn. And as you know, it's a condition that you don't see. So I could be sitting here right now and having a hypoglycemic reaction and start to sweat and get all disoriented, and people are used to me being very functional. And so I've learned how to really ask for what I need. I've learned discipline. I've become a great producer because it taught me to be very and very organized. I have to think ahead everywhere I go. It's always in my mind. So where am I going to be? How long since my insulin? This morning I was very tired. It's been a long couple of busy days. And okay, I have this interview. I have to rest. Don't schedule anything. Like, it's a lot of planning, which has incorporated into my life, into being a planner, which made me a great producer. So it taught me discipline. I sort of joke now, it gives me a really wonderful basis to lead a really healthy lifestyle, because now I just keep it clean. People say, "Oh, you can cheat on the holidays," or I'm like, no, my diabetes doesn't take a vacation. So, and I've learned it's their discomfort because they know they're going to gorge. And
Correct.
I just choose, look, I know there's people that can do that. Everyone manages their diabetes differently. There's someone I'm connected to on social who has figured out how to eat whatever he wants and still maintain his, great. That's not
Correct.
my story. It's been a lot of trial and error, figuring out what works, what doesn't, learning to be vocal about my needs, which, as women,
Yes.
not feeling guilty or shameful if it's just too much or I'm too tired, or, as your blood sugar sometimes
Mm-hmm.
fluctuates, you don't feel well, I'm crabby, I have to say it's my blood sugar, I need to just cancel. So It's
you've learned.
really molded me into who I have become as an adult.
Exactly. Now, how old were you? Now, I'm assuming that the visual impairment was that a result of a complication of the diabetes?
Hmm.
And how old were you when you first noticed the visual impairment in your eye? And was it gradual or did it occur abruptly?
I was 20. I was living in Los Angeles where I had gone to pursue a scholarship as a professional dancer. I had a pretty severe eating disorder, which is a bad thing on its own. But when you add
Diabetes.
type 1 diabetes to it, it's like a Molotov cocktail. It's death waiting to happen. So I have a father, or had a father, he's passed, but excuse me, who had was an ophthalmologist. And I called him one day and I said, Dad, I have these weird, like, funny spots in my eyes. I don't know. I keep blinking and it doesn't go away. And he, of course, like, went into panic mode. This was in 1990, 91. So the technology had advanced somewhat, but nothing like we have today. He got me an appointment the next day at UCLA Jewel Stein Eye Institute, where I saw a retinal specialist. And it was already pretty advanced. As you know, you get bleeding in the back of your eye and it starts hemorrhaging, and then the retina detaches. All that happened.
Yep.
It ended up being a total of 40 surgeries, combination laser and uh, on the table surgeries,
Wow.
retinal detachments in both eyes.
Oh, my word.
So they salvaged my central tunnel vision in the right.
Okay. Okay.
It was Dr. Yoshizumi who said, "You got to get a handle on your life or you're going to die. I don't know. You're making my job really difficult." He was just blunt. He's like, how are you managing your diabetes? And I was like, "Great." He said, "No, you're not."
Because your body is letting me know that you are not. Exactly. And you know what is interesting? Because I love the fact that you bring up the to the point abruptness, realness of a physician in your life that drives it home. I and my husband, we're both physicians. And my husband, as a surgeon, will at times, let's say if he's operating on a patient and that patient has a long smoking history, he's operated on them. He's told them, okay, smoking is going to hinder your wound healing. You got to stop. Or, you've been at it for so long. If you don't quit, you're going to end up with some form of cancer.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Can I get a lozenge?
Of course you can.
I don't know why I'm coughing. I'm not
Get
a
a
cough.
lozenge, honey. Get a lozenge. So yes, I and my husband are both physicians. I'm occupational medicine, my husband's general surgery. But like when he's talking to patients and he sees their smoking history, he'll use this as an opportunity to get the individual to stop smoking. And if the spouse is with them and the patient is like, yeah, yeah, doc, I hear you. He'll turn to the spouse while the spouse is right there and say, okay, Mrs. Jones, I would recommend now go ahead and get in a life insurance policy. So at least you can cash in when he's gone. Because, if he's going to continue to smoke, you might as well get something out of it. He'll say something like that that'll jar you. And sometimes that's what you need. And you need it coming from an individual who has a connection with you because they are connected somehow to your care. But sometimes you need them not to be a family member or not to be a close friend, because you're hearing it from them all the time. And with them, you may feel like you don't understand what I'm going through. You have no idea how I feel, the what this is doing on my psyche. But when a physician that you respect comes at you and say, you're on the road, you keep this up, you'll be dead in such and such and such and such. And sometimes it's kind of harsh to hear, but I've had to say it to patients as well when I was in clinical practice, because I cared and I could see that they were on a road to destruction. And someone other than the people that they had been already connected with needed to be the person to say it.
I
You
had,
know?
I had a therapist that said the same thing. She said, I don't want to be a part of your death. So you either call an eating disorder inpatient unit while you're sitting here, or I'm not going to see you anymore.
Wow. See?
Picked up the phone and she dialed the number and she handed it to me.
Unreal. Real. Now, how did the visual impairment, what type of impact did it have on your dancing career? Or did it?
It ended it before
Mm-hmm.
it began. I mean, I had just moved to LA. I was just getting acquainted and I couldn't drive, so I couldn't get anywhere. I haven't driven since 1992. And, I couldn't perform. I don't see in the dark. I can't work around a lighting scape. I don't see stairs. I don't have depth perception issues. Well, I'm highly functional. Those kinds of scenarios were just
Impossible.
done.
Wow. Now, this,
21, yeah.
wow. 21. Now, describe that day in 2009 when everything changed.
It was a beautiful day, spring. Well, you live up north when the spring hits and you finally got through the winter and you're like, oh, everything's going to be okay.
Yes.
I was crossing the street, I look both ways like your mom says. And, one minute I was up and the next minute I found myself face down in the pavement. I had no idea what was going on. Fortunately, a paramedic team had been called out on an unrelated issue not far from where I was because it was 4:15 on a Friday afternoon. And I had been hit by a New York City express bus and was pinned under the tire. They started
What?
asking me questions. What day is it? How old are you? Who's the president? I was like, what? Why do you care?
Why are you asking me
Mama,
this?
will he come back? No, kill me.
Wow. I mean, so split second. Split
I couldn't
second.
move. Yeah, I couldn't move. I had no feeling in my right side. I thought I had no leg.
Oh my word. What was your recovery process like, and how long did it take?
As of tomorrow will be 1 year since my 19th. Had a total of 20 surgeries. They took me that night to a local city hospital that had a level 1 trauma emergency, so it was the right call, close to the location of the accident. And I write in my book that I was there for 10 days. They took me into emergency surgery that night, and I remember asking the ER nurse, "Is my leg attached?" And she said yes. And I'm like, okay, start. And I was delusional. Oh, it's not that bad. I'll be at work next week. It's okay. You can't
Right.
come. And so trauma does interesting things to your brain. 10 days later, they came in and they informed me that the injury was too severe and I have diabetes, and they were ready to amputate above my knee because all this, I was crushed. The bones were crushed, the muscles were crushed, the skin from my ankle to my thigh from tire burn was gone. So, your skin is your biggest organ. So when
Absolutely.
that everything's exposed, you get infection. So they were not a trauma hospital, so it was a little out of their
Scope.
practice. So I, being resourceful, started calling somebody find me. I knew also as a dancer and a fitness person that my toes were pink and that the nurses were telling me I had a pulse. So clearly there was still something flowing, as a physician. And if my feet were black and it was obvious there was gangrene and there was no circulation, that would have been one thing, but that wasn't the case. So I got myself a referral. Actually, my father, through my eye doctor, he called
Hmm.
my eye doctor who had done my cataract surgery in New York when I needed cataract removed, and he knew the head of trauma plastics at New York Presbyterian Walcona Medical Center, which also has one of the best burn units in the world.
Wow.
Oh, that was a Sunday. I called Dr. Spector's office, one of the best trauma surgeons on the planet, on Monday. And being the director, I was like, look, they want to lop off my leg. No one's managing my diabetes. They're leaving me in the hallway. Like I'm gonna, get me out of here. So they got me transferred to the burn unit where I spent 2 months in ICU. So my first hospital stay was 4 months from the time
Wow.
I went in to the time I went home.
Wow. And I'm listening to you and I'm hearing how several lessons. One, there comes a time, even with the way medicine has progressed till this day, there may come a time in your life when you need to take control, when you may be the only one you're surrounded by in the midst of all of these doctors and healthcare practitioners that will take ownership of your health and your psyche. That's one. Two, it's interesting how you were at a facility, and again, that team, like you, could clearly see that there was vascular flow, that these tissues can be revitalized and reformed, and yes, it's going to take time, it's going to take surgery, but we're not equipped. So instead of them saying, you know what, we're not equipped, we need to either look at her insurance options and get her transferred, you had to take control. So listeners, I'm telling you, you may be in a position that although you may trust your physicians, you may trust the hospital, trust the healthcare system, nobody is going to assume the full responsibility of your health like you can. And so if you see something and feel within your spirit and know that something is not right, take control. Don't leave it to someone else. Take control.
And I did
Yeah.
find out a long time after the fact, because I had, that initial series of limb saving surgeries, and those were like 8 and 10 and 12-hour procedures. Like back, they started with the bones and the vascular and the skin, and they did a laceratus flap, which means they took the muscles out of my back, which are now in my leg because I didn't have tissue. And there's somebody at the door. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Get the door. Amy has answered the door and now she's back.
I swear I didn't schedule anything during this time. This is just funny today. It's like life is weird right now.
So you were saying those first surgeries were the limb sparing surgeries, the 8, 10, 12-hour surgeries. They took skin grafts, muscle, and all of that reshaping.
Infection. I had a serious osteomyelitis, obviously, with an open wound from my ankle to my thigh. That's unavoidable. So I had extraordinary care. I mean, really, nurses are special people, but burn unit nurses, that's a whole
Nothing like them. Yes.
People say to me now, are you in pain? And I'm like, well, I was on a burn unit for 2 months, so it's kind of relative. You can't even, I'm like, you can't even wrap your brain around it. And I'm not a complainer, but whew.
Yeah, that was painful. Was there ever any time during these surgeries where you just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. This is the last one. I'm not doing it anymore. Whatever function I have, I have. Did you ever get to the point, or did you say, nope, I'm in it to win it. I'm going to see this through as far as I possibly can?
I think that's a multi-layered question. I think when you're in it and you're drugged up, you can't really understand the scope of what's going on, except that I was there a long time and there was a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
I practice SGI Buddhism. We chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I kept chanting. I had actually determined, as part of our practice, we recite the Lotus Sutra morning and evening. And I have determined that I was not going to miss that. We call it Gongyo. No matter what, no matter how hard it was, I couldn't lift my head off the pillow, how long it took me. So as a practicing SGI member, I know that in Buddhism, this is my karma, this is my mission. I knew whatever was going on, it was big and it was bad, but I had to create value out of it. So I kept chanting I would chant my way into surgery. I'd come out of surgery. There would be people who had been in my room for 3 hours chanting. You know, there was a lot of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo
Yes.
through all of that. Um, so I think it was partly just my physical delusion from the excessive amount of narcotics. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those situations that you don't realize till you kind of look back later. And, you know, when we interviewed my doctors way after the fact, they actually were not 100% confident that this sort of cocktail of rebuilding me was going to work and I would be able to keep my leg. There was always a question, even with surgeons at that level, that I mean, that's how severe it was. They did, you know, it was, you know, you do your best, you do, and then you have to wait and see.
Correct.
Respond, do the grafts take? Does the infection heal? It was a lot of factors
Yes.
had to work. Uh, that
So
was
after all of this, after all of these surgeries, all of this time, when were you finally able to manifest your victory dance? And did it look like anything you imagined?
I actually, I mean, practically speaking, I did perform on June 15th, 2017, with my then professional company, the Victory Dance Project, which I write about in the book, which evolved. Um, so, you know, it was, I did it, I was sort of put up to it, to tell you the truth. People were like, "You're gonna have to do this," and if you see, we'll talk about the movie. You see the movie, I'm in there going, "No, it, I literally pull my hoodie over my head." I did it though, and you know, coming from where I came from and the ability that I had physically, I don't have that now. I mean, my structure is different, so my movement patterns are different. So I had to just work with what I had, but the process of the company and starting to choreograph and being able to put work out through these extraordinary dancers from, you know, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater and Juilliard and Hamilton and Dance Theater of Harlem and Lion King and Cirque, and I mean the list went on. And so you think you can dance winner. I mean, these dancers were just like beyond, and that was enough for me. And then this whole thing arose about my performing, and um,
Yeah, what emotions did you experience when it's about now you performing and you performing? Did your mind go back to knowing what you did before, what you could do? Okay, and now I'm supposed to perform. What emotions did you experience? Was it um, excitement? Was it a little bit regret? Was it a little bit of
terror.
I'm in?
I mean, fortunately, there was a lot going on. We were producing our 3-year gala. We were honoring Chita Rivera. I was choreographing a 2-hour show with 12 sections of choreography and 20 dancers and an after party, and they were filming a movie. And so I didn't have a lot of time to really get caught up in it. My body was on the breakdown because it was just a lot on me physically. One of my doctors was like, "Okay, you're going to do what?" Like, so I
Oh,
said, "You guys got me one night only. One night, you know."
only yes, the song.
So, you know, it was challenging on a lot of levels because I had been so agile and so, you know, aggressive and so athletic as a dancer. You can see it in my choreography. And here I am working with these dancers that are just extraordinary, and I just physically am not
Hmm.
able to jump. I'm not, there's things I just don't can do
Correct.
because my leg is put back together in pieces, like literally.
Right.
So
Right.
of my body, the hip bone is now my shin bone. They grafted, you know, my hip bone because my tibia was too injured to have enough mass to support my body weight. So I mean,
And I think it's important for people to appreciate who are listening to this, and that the surgeries that you underwent, because they were taking various grafts from other portions of your body, now that area doesn't function like it used to. That area is subject to its own wound healing, its own pain symptomatology as a result. And so your whole body has changed.
I
Your
never
whole,
had shoulder problems before. I had a very hypermobile upper back, and I was like, oh, because the tissue's not there. So I do a lot of shoulder rehab because otherwise, it's the muscles
exactly.
that hold your scapula back and down are just, they're in my leg now. So I tell them, "Look,
Exactly.
I'm doing my lat exercises," but people don't get
Right. So this is not just about your leg. The person that we are talking to, listening to, and watching right now is in a lot of sense brand new, or very different, almost from head to
it.
toe than what she was, 20 years ago. So we need to appreciate that. Now, you mentioned something earlier about a movie, and you have your own documentary. What was it like to be a part of the creative process into your own documentary? What was that like? Because you're having to, it's a documentary about you, so there, I'm sure, certain portions, and there are certain times. I recall, I can only imagine what it was like seeing it, or having to relive it, or having to express it in a way that penetrates other individuals that are watching it, because you wanted to have that intended purpose. But in some ways, you probably had to relive some experiences that, weren't so pleasant. What was it like?
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
Idea in the interview process where we brought up some of the backstory, yes, I did have to go back into some of that, kind of explain how this had all happened. But the idea had been posed to me by the director, Brian Thomas, who I had met through the dance community. He had done some photos for me. We became friends. Turns out he is a two-time Emmy nominee for choreographing for Michael Jackson and Whitney and Beyonce and Jamie Foxx and Usher and Paula Abdul and Pink and Liza Minnelli and the Cheetah, like the list. The guy's so humble, is and he had toured with Michael, choreographed for Michael, phased out, aged out, as so many of us do, of performing, and had rerouted himself into photo video, was doing a lot of commercial work. And as we were all getting closer to 50 and we had become friends, he said, I really want to do something that has more depth, more meaning, more impact. And I think this is an amazing story. What do you think about a movie? And I was like, mm, you know, I I like to be in the booth where nobody sees me.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'm a dancer. I always want to lose 5 pounds. I didn't really love the idea of being on film, but I also know, and I write in the stuff that's coming up that we're getting ready to launch for National Diabetes Month, and we spoke on this, how the only movie I saw as a kid with diabetes was Steel Magnolias. And
Right.
spoiler alert, she dies. Sorry if you haven't seen it, but you know, they all were amazing in their, and I didn't know that when I went to see it in the theater, and it wrecked me. So I had not really seen. I told Brian going into it, and this was right around the time we were starting to think about this big gala performance, and then the idea of me dancing, and he's like, well, if you're going to dance, let's really follow the process of that. And he did a brilliant job of kind of just stepping back and following my life as a woman with diabetes, as a single female, as a business owner in New York, just trying to survive the city, the physical challenges and the doctor appointments, and my body breaking down, the trying to produce a show of that scope with dancers of that level and race. Like, he really got it. He's so brilliant. So he just kind of was always in the background. I would forget that he was there, and sometimes forget that I was mic'd. And there's some funny moments because I don't hold back.
No.
So in the
You.
in the interview process, yes, I had to go back into some of that and some of the family history. But I said to Brian, there's three things that are important to me about this film, and you can have 100% creative license. I'm not interested in any production. I'm not interested in doing any editing. I trust you. You're a visionary. You're humble. You're brilliant. You're a dancer, so you get it. He was kind of the perfect person at the perfect time to really see. I said, we have to tell the diabetes story and we have to show, because people don't realize the amount of work it is on a daily basis to just stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
Type 1 diabetes, with a Dexcom, without, it doesn't matter. It's a ferocious amount of work. I said, that has to come through. I said, my SGI Buddhist practice is a fundamental part of the underlying of everything I do has to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the level of the performance. And we were honoring Chita Rivera, who's a Broadway legend, who was the first Latino female to receive a Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2009 when it still meant something. And from President Obama. And she's just every Tony Award, Kennedy Center, like this woman is a legend in the, class like it used to be. So extraordinary. So that was, she gave us an interview, like a sit down interview, separate from the actual event, and just so gracious. And I was like, oh my God, it's Cheetah, So it was, and again, I think because there was so much going on at that time, it was just one other thing that Brian was just there and he's my friend, and I didn't really, he was just off in the corner with a camera,
Right.
And then I
So the
saw the
pieces came
trailer.
together.
I saw the trailer and I was like, I knew he had been editing, but I was like, and I knew his credits and I knew his level. And I saw the trailer and I went, oh my God, this is like a real movie.
Yes.
Like, this isn't like a YouTube
Correct.
video. This is like
Yeah. This is the
it's,
real deal.
it's done. We won, like, I've lost count, uh, 21 selections plus awards in 13 countries and 9 cities around the world. I don't know. I stay
Where
out of all that. So
where can our listeners view the documentary?
we will let you know. We are currently working on distribution. If there are any distributors out there, please contact us.
All right now. All
It's
right now.
a full-length documentary feature. It's, literally
Yes.
won international accolades.
Wow. Okay, so now in addition to the documentary, you also wrote an award-winning book entitled Dance Because You Can: 5 Steps to Transform Trauma into Triumph. Yes, look at that. Oh, that cover. I love it.
I
It
took
is
the cover photo.
it is perfect. It is perfect. Now, can you share 1 or 2 steps? And I don't mean necessarily in detail, but one or two steps to transform your trauma into triumph.
What became interesting to me, especially after the fact, is that people started to say, oh my God, how did you do it? You're a hero. And to me, I just did what I had to do. I woke up every day. I faced what I had to face. I learned to take things an hour at a time. But I unknowingly went through this system that I call DANCE of determination, acceptance, never give up, courage, and enthusiasm, that as I looked back over the scope, and even, my 19th and 20th surgeries were last October and this past February. So this was, I call it my 10-year tune-up. So this will be a lifelong, people are like, you still rehabilitate? I said, of course I'm still rehabilitating. I have no ligaments in my knee. My tissue was missing. If I don't rehabilitate, I don't walk. Like, the workout is not optional for me. Again, that's a choice. So I started to, people said you should really write a book. And I thought, again, I don't know. And then as I started writing, I was like, wow, that was a lot more cathartic, because I do go into some history of, like, the family and the accident and the relational struggles, and into some detail of working through, we have to determine right now, we have to determine every day to stay like focused and leave the news off, or this idea of acceptance. Whenever I speak, I'm like, okay, so do we have to like everything that's going on? I make everybody shake their head. But if we
Correct.
accept it, we don't have to like it.
Mm-hmm.
Accepting it is not some like, oh, I'm just submitting to what. No, I still don't like it. I can't drive. I live in Florida. I mean, fortunately, we have Uber and this and that, but I don't like being, deformed. But the acceptance of that is how we are able to see a different road and create a new scenario. I see a lot of victim of circumstance, or well, my parents did this, or this happened to me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, we've all had things that have happened. What are you doing about it?
Mm-hmm.
The practice of SJ Buddhism is based on the law of cause and effect. Everything you think, say, or do is a cause, and you get an effect.
Correct.
So if you want to change the circumstances of whatever your mom did when you were 12, make a new cause. Do
There
it
you go.
different. Go to therapy. Do your human revolution. Don't complain. I'm tough about that. Like, I have no patience for. I'm trying to be more
Right.
patient. A little bit arrogant sometimes. I'm like, get over. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you put
Get
your,
yourself together.
you
That's
know,
what you want to say.
look at you. But people are where they are, and it's a process, and the steps are sort of interdisciplinary. You can be in any one of them at,
At any time. Yes.
have courage to move ahead or make a different choice or be uncomfortable or say no to someone
Mm-hmm.
and not worry about what they think, or you know we can't give up in a situation where you don't know if you're going to live or die. Or I mean,
Correct.
it's a choice. So I looked back, and the thing that I had found interesting is there was so much effort and needed effort to rehabilitating my physical body and getting me physically able to move on with my life, but there wasn't really a framework when your whole life is, on how to rebuild my life. People were like, okay, you're doing so great. What are you doing now? And I'm like, I don't know. I never got run over by a bus before. Like,
Hello.
I mean, I think we're all going through it for some degree with COVID. I'm going through it, and you're going
Yes,
through it. When you speak,
definitely.
you're used to being out. I'm used to giving master classes. I'm used to being out with youth. I'm used to being out in great big groups of people. So I get to implement the process right now because everybody's going through it. Virtual learning, so it'll
Correct.
anything. Don't get hit by a bus. I do as I say, not as I do. Learn from my experience. Don't try and replicate it. It's really,
Amy, that's hilarious. But you know what? That was one of the reasons.
volunteer.
Right?
And there's a second edition in the works right now.
Yes, that's why I was attracted to your book. And that's one of the reasons why I asked that question, because I want our listeners to understand that it is based on that acronym DANCE. And I love that because coming from you, it's so apropos, right? And for me, people that see in the background live today, when I came through my trauma with my diagnosis, and it was purposed in my life to live. And what did live mean for me? Love myself and others, inspire those around me, voice my dreams and ambitions, and enjoy life. So I got it when I looked at your book. I got it. And I want the audience that are listening to this, I want you to live today and dance because you can. And Amy, listen, this time has gone by so fast, but I want the audience to know, how can they get in touch with you? Because you offer, like you said, you've been used to doing master classes and but there's virtual stuff that you do, and there is still work that you can
Summits,
deal with
coaching.
individuals.
Yeah.
So how can the audience reach you?
My website is amyjordanspeaks.com. Instagram at amyjordanspeaks. We have a fun series on YouTube every week called the Purple Couch Diaries. In November, we're launching a a big campaign around these issues of diabetes and being a female with diabetes and living with diabetes, and Facebook, Amy Jordan. So mostly you can go, all that is on the website, the book information. I also wrote a small book called 26 Tips for Easier Living with Diabetes. It's just a series of things I wish somebody had told me when I was
Mm.
growing up with diabetes. It's a fun little book. It was, not illustrated but graphic by my team, and that's all on the website. The movie trailers on the website, the blog posts are on the website. So
Perfect. Now, guys, I'm going to make sure that all of her information and contact information is in the show notes with this episode. Amy Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your life, and sharing your time with us on today. Listen, everybody, you better dance because you can and live today and every day. Until we talk and meet and see each other again for another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry, Dr. Cherie Talks Faith and Facts.